Friday, May 10th, 2021. I'm on CSX's Chicago line in upstate New York, just west of Amsterdam, New York at Guy Park. Gonna observe train action in central New York State for the next several days. Mostly on CSX, but if you think I'm gonna spend my entire time railfanning CSX with its bombardment of General Electric locomotives, you got another guess coming. I hope to railfan the Finger Lakes Railway between Geneva and Solvay in return, their GS2 freight. Usually it runs with a fleet of GP38-2s painted in a New York Central lightning stripe scheme. That'll be a nice break from the GE downpour. Note this relay box that's super elevated here. That was to combat a flood they had here back in 2011 when Hurricane Irene hit. This area south of the tracks used to be a nice park, which I used to frequent railfanning on hot summer days under the shady maple trees. This whole area was underwater with that tropical storm Irene. That building over there was the old Chamber of Commerce, which was damaged. They never really rebuilt it. Nothing has changed in almost a year since I was here. And there's a chain link fence straddling the tracks here, eliminating my luxury spot under the maple trees, unobstructed view of the railroad. Here's the tree I spent countless summer afternoons underneath, watching the Conrail and CSX trains go by. Tree is still there, but you'll notice the chain link fence. In fact, the fence is going right through where I plot my chair, usually. To look at the tree, you would think it was October with the colored leaves, but it's May. A lot has changed here around the Guy Park area. The park is a fragment of what it once was. The New York Central style signal bridge west of here is long gone, replaced with just two single signal masts, tricolor light signals. The only constants are this sign and Russo's restaurant in the background. That grill has been here about 80, 90 years almost. Painted in a nice fire engine red color, has always served good food. That has never changed. And right behind that house and up to the left, there used to be a pole with a Volkswagen Beetle on top of it. That's gone too. The house looks better than it ever has. And that place over there used to be a mobile mini mart. Sometimes I'd get car repairs done while I was watching trains. Now it's an automotive shop, just a repair shop. No more mini mart. Straddles busy Route New York 5. Looking east, this was once the mighty former New York Central water level route. It was a 4-track main line at the time. You can see the vacancy on the left here. That's where the 2 westward tracks were. And they were ripped up in the 50s and leaving only this. This was the route of the 20th Century Limited, and just to give you an idea how fast the 20th Century Limited was, back in the 50s, for example, the 20th Century Limited left Grand Central Terminal, New York, at 6 p.m., and it would get into LaSalle Street Station, Chicago, at 9 a.m. Whereas at the same time, the Pennsylvania Railroad's Broadway Limited left Penn Station at 6 p.m. and arrived Chicago Union Station at 9 a.m. And I'd ask people, which train was faster? And they would always say, oh, sounds like they were both the same to me. Nope, hardly. The Broadway Limited traveled 907 miles on its 16-hour run, whereas the 20th Century Limited traveled 960 miles on its 16-hour run. That averages exactly 60 miles an hour. The Broadway Limited was in the 50s, the high 50s. So the Century really made tracks, traveling the longer route, and it still got into Chicago the same time the Broadway Limited did. Westbound Amtrak. And passing at 141 was Amtrak train 281, en route from New York to Niagara Falls, New York, with number 700, the class unit of the Amtrak P32 ACDM. And we've got a westbound CSX at 152. Should be on track number 1. a CSX Q205 out of Brookfield, Massachusetts. He was powered by an ES40 DC and an ES44 AC. We're now further west on the CSX Chicago line at the old town of Fonda, New York. It was discovered in 1750. Here there's a controlled siding that runs between CP 184 to the east and 188 to the west. And east end of town, the signals have lit up for an eastbound at 346. Typical quiet Monday. Typical trio of Gevos. He had quite a bit of sheetrock on them. Might be some manifest out of Chicago. And underneath some interesting cloud formations, we're now at Lock 14 in Palatine Bridge, New York. This is the road crossing that leads to the lock. For the longest time, the crossing here was unprotected. It just had crossing bucks. No lights, no gates. Accessing the lock was at your own risk, and there were some fatalities here. So then the lock closed to the public for a number of years because of this. But they wanted to reopen again, as it is part of the lock system across New York State and the Erie Canal. So they wanted a crossing installed with protection. So CSX said to them, well, you're a state property. We're not going to pay for it. That's your responsibility. So the state agreed, and they paid for this crossing to be installed. Lock 14 is one of several well-manicured lock systems along the Erie Canal in upstate New York, and they closely parallel the railroad in many spots. This CSX main line, the old water level route of CSX, Conrail, Penn Central, and New York Central, has always been a favorite of mine, especially in Conrail days. Conrail ran a lot of fast trailer van trains through here. Frequent, fast. It was just an awesome sight. CSX in the early years ran a lot of intermodals here too, fast, and foreign power was common. But with precision scheduled railroading today, you don't have as many trains and not quite as many opportunities to see foreign power. But the trains that CSX runs are huge, and that unto itself is very impressive to see. An eastbound CSX freight at 424, just up the hill a little ways from the lock. Huge train with DPU, likely headed for the port of Newark as it had a lot of marine containers on it. That stack train that passed was Q162, en route from North Baltimore, Ohio to the port of Newark, New Jersey. I'll tell you, looking back on this water level route back in New York Central days, what I would have given to have been able to see Hudsons, Mohawks, and Niagara type steam locomotives whipping by here at 80 miles an hour with their trains. I'm sorry, Pennsylvania Railroad, but the New York Central by far had the prettiest steam locomotives. 504, here comes Amtrak 283 en route from New York to Niagara Falls, New York. B32 ACDM number 7 is Amtrak 64, the Maple Leaf from Niagara Falls, New York to New York. It's called the Maple Leaf, but it's a bit of a misnomer since it doesn't go to Canada these days. Hopefully by July 1st, that train will return to Toronto once again. Westbound at 540. Two more Gevos and a lot of empty auto racks on it. Those cars probably came out of New Jersey. We're at the west end of Utica. We got this freight train that stopped to make a pickup. He's got a brace of CN units on him. Also has a lot of trash containers on up front. Some kind of a drag freight. Might be a Selkirk Buffalo train. He made his pickup in the yard in Utica. He's backing up to couple to his train. This is Q620. Runs from Selkirk to the Canadian National at Messina, New York, and then it heads to Montreal. We move move west on the main line here west of Utica. We're around milepost 239. These are the eastward signals guarding an interlocking, which might be CP 239. The eastbound track, or track 2, is hot. I can see a green on the top. And patience pays off. And waning light at 8:18, Q620 is finally heading west. He's got a neat lash up. Lead unit is C40-8W 7868. Dash 8s are rare on CSX these days. Looks like you had a CN 75 and a couple of ET44 ACs getting a free ride. Eastbound order rack train 264, Q264, bound for New England destinations. Today is a beautiful May 11th, 2021. I'm a year older, and I hope CSX packages me a beautiful birthday gift today. Today we're at the west of Utica on the Chicago line of CSX. This is the Reba Road crossing, and since my last visit here, they put gates up. This was an unprotected crossing at one time. Very remote location. We're actually located on the outskirts of the city of Rome, New York. And here we're just east of CP 248. And that New York Central signal bridge is gone. It's been almost 20 years since I've been at that crossing. Got a westbound stack train at 9:50 in the morning. He's moving. thundering stacks. They still know how to move the intermodal trains on this line. That was Q159 en route from the port of Newark, New Jersey to Syracuse. Look at the color on the leaves in the distance. You would think this was October, not May. I've never seen so much color on the trees in the spring like this. Milepost 247.85. That's the exact mileage from Grand Central Terminal. We're about 10 miles west of Utica. This territory is controlled by the NC dispatcher. West of Syracuse, it's the NF dispatcher. We're now in Rome, New York, and this is the Amtrak station here at Rome. The station was built between 1912 and 1914. This replaced a downtown station, which was closed due to a track realignment. The tracks are elevated through here, and the station platform is a low platform affair right between the two main tracks. A very exhilarating place when a speeding freight train is going through. Incidentally, the area we were in before it, Reba Road, is just west of Oriskany. That was the site of the bloodiest battle in the Revolutionary War. The inside of the Amtrak depot. They've done an admirable job of restoring this building. Over the years, I've seen it in various states of disrepair. You can see on platform level, the tracks are right there alongside the platform, and they move pretty fast. Well, at 10:36, approaching Westwood here at Rome, New York on this chilly May day is probably the hottest westbound on CSX. And I mean the hottest. Q001 runs from North Bergen to Chicago in about a 22-hour schedule. It's comparable with New York Central's Super Van 9 back in New York Central days. It's a remnant of the old bullet train from the early 2000s. UPS train. Leaving Rome, New York in the dust. That is a super duper hot shot. Glad I saw that. I'll be out on this line Thursday to see its counterpart, Q002. He'll be in Chicago this evening, late this evening. He left Little Ferry or North Bergen at about 4:30 this morning. I mentioned the bullet train, just a little history on that. Back in the early 2000s, around 2002, 2003, the UP and the CSX teamed up to operate a transcontinental intermodal train with UPS business from LA to Little Ferry. Eastbound on the UP was called the ZLALF, and westbound it was ZLFLA. On the CSX it was Q100 eastbound and Q153 westbound. 63-hour running time, but it was a dispatching nightmare. They literally had to shut the railroad down to let those trains go through. Poor timekeeping ultimately ended the service, but the CSX portion of that still operates, and you just saw it. And approaching the Rome station at 11:06 is Amtrak train 284, route from Niagara Falls, New York to New York City. He's stopping here on track number 1 today. He's going to go over to 2 at CP 248. Number 700, saw this yesterday. 332. Time en route from Syracuse. He left here about 34 minutes late. Now further west, just east of Oneida, New York, at the New London Greenway Road crossing. We're just east of CP 257, and the signal bridge with the New York Central searchlight signals are long gone. Looking east from the crossing, just east of here, Hogue Road used to have an overpass over the tracks, but that overpass is gone. This crossing is significant in that back in 2005, I saw my very first GEVO here, but it was a Union Pacific one. CSX hadn't received their first deliveries of them at that point. And we have a westbound approaching the Greenway Road crossing at 11:58. Looks like 205. That's Q205 out of Worcester, Massachusetts. And at 12:06 p.m. approaching eastbound is Amtrak 48, the Lakeshore Limited en route from Chicago to Boston and New York. Doesn't run every day. Good horn blowing by that guy or gal. Now further west in Verona, New York, we're just west of CP 257. We're looking west at the Blackman Corners Road crossing. The last time I was here was back in Conrail days, And on the left side of the right-of-way, the tracks were strewn with telegraph poles as far as the eye could see. Those poles are long gone. And we have an eastbound CSX freight at 1:45. Approaching Blackman's Corners Road, coming down the straightaway. Looks like a stack train. was one of the hotter eastbounds on this line, Q004, from Chicago to South Kearney, New Jersey. And we're now at the Rock Road crossing further west at Verona, New York. I call this the Hobo News crossing. They call it that because back in Conrail days and early CSX days, a senior citizen would come down here and meet all rail fans and try to hawk his published paper called the Hobo News, which tells some railroad stories about this area. I don't know if he's going to come today. He'd be about 90 years old if he did. Looks kind of ominous. Air is unstable. Get a few sprinkles here and there, but it's mostly dry, but very cool. And at 2:30, approaching westbound is a real hot potato. Q003, en route from North Bergen to Chicago with connections to BNSF to the west coast. This train's predecessor years ago was Conrail train TVLA, the hottest train on Conrail. Performed the same function. In fact, if you get my Green Frog video, my latest video, Conrail Fast Freight's 96, I shot TVLA passing this exact location. as long as Conrail TVLA usually was. Has everything, UPS, Schneider, Amazon, all hot traffic for CSX. Now further west on the Chicago line, just west of Canastota, BB Bridge Road, and this is the start of the Old Erie Canal BB Bridge trailhead. I can hear an eastbound approaching here at 3:15. You can hear the pulsating roar of a General Motors diesel in the lash up. West of here there's a wilderness area that tracks go through, and so does this hiking trail. Pacific lumber on board, but how about that lead unit, SD40-2 8095? That SD40-2 incidentally was a former L&N unit built in 1980. And while that train passed, Amtrak 281 from New York to Niagara Falls passed by in the background. What have we here? Getting old EMD to death here. That was some kind of a business train with a GP40-2 and an SP stainless steel sleeping car on them. Westbound 335. Very short train. That was likely Q157 out of Philadelphia for Chicago. Actually North Baltimore. And 344 we have an eastbound. Sounds like Amtrak. It's been busy the last half hour. This should be train 64 from Niagara Falls, New York to New York City. Next stop will be Utica. He's climbing up the hill to pass over the town of Canastota. Just north of the crossing is the Erie Canal hiking trail. The Old Erie Canal State Historic Park, multi-use trail, runs all the way across the state. Amidst a Great Lake sky, and we are near the Great Lakes here. Lake Ontario's not too far away, and Oswego, northwest of Syracuse, we're only about 15 miles east of Syracuse. Got another eastbound. It's been train after train here at Canastota, BB Bridge Road. This line does get quite busy at times. It's like a stacked train. Q162. Practically endless. Q162 from North Baltimore, Ohio to the port of Newark, New Jersey. It was loaded with marine containers. Westbound at 410, it's been relentless here. It's got a Jeep on him. He was really moving through here. Second unit, SD40-28851. That's a former Conrail, SD40-2. And we're now further west. We're just east of Dewitt Yard in East Syracuse. This is the Kirkville Road crossing. There's 3 tracks here. There's a lead that heads into the yard at the east end. And finally, we have some action. Coming east out of DeWitt Yard at 6:08 is Q20 en route from Chicago to Worcester, Massachusetts. This train has evolved over the years. Used to be Q114, then Conrail TV14, and then Supervan 14 on the New York Central, but this train is not as fast as Supervan 14 used to be. He works here at DeWitt, this train, and he'll work at West Springfield. Yes, Q020 is CSX's primary intermodal train between Chicago and New England destinations. Train goes as far as Worcester, and that line is cleared for domestic double stacks. Before, all these other trains went to Boston's Beacon Park Yard, but that yard is now closed. Time is 6:22. Coming west now is Amtrak 283, en route from New York City to Niagara Falls, New York. Approaching Kirkwood and milepost 280, measured from Grand Central Terminal, New York City. And he'll be stopping at Syracuse Amtrak station about 10 minutes. And approaching eastbound at 6:44 p.m. This will be our last train on this great birthday that I've experienced alongside CSX. This is Q264, primary automobile train between Buffalo and Worcester, Massachusetts. Leader was a C40-8W.